If you needed any more proof that fantasy football is basically a battle of attrition, just look at the injury report the last couple of weeks. Huge, big name wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. It's like everybody's getting hurt. So what do? You go to the waiver wire. Guess what? Everyone else is going to the waiver wire too. So now what? You look ahead. Don't just pick up those players who had a good game last week. Let's pick up the guys who could have big games coming up. They haven't quite broken out yet, but they've shown signs. So here we go. These are the top players to stash ahead of week 6. And one thing real quick, we're looking ahead to 100K. That's right. We're about to get to 100,000 subscribers. We appreciate everyone who's been watching over the years, but if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please help us out. Click that button. It takes just a second to do it, and it helps us out. If we are helping you win your fantasy football leagues, we'd appreciate it. So let's start things off a little differently this week. I'm going to talk not just about one player, but the entire backfield. It's the Chargers, because you know now they're missing Najee Harris for the season and Amari Hampton at least for 4 weeks because he was just placed on IR. Now, we didn't find out the official news on Hampton until Monday. I did mention on the waiver wire video that we knew Hampton was banged up at the very least. I didn't exactly give a ringing endorsement to the idea of Hassan Haskins as the next man up. But I've got to talk to you now about both Hassan Haskins and Kimani Vidal because, I mean, both of them are going to have to be involved here. Now, I think this is where they belong. Let me just say that right now. Also, I don't want to pony up a whole bunch of fab for either one of these guys. We don't know how this backfield is going to look. And I don't just mean as far as who's getting the touches, but how are they actually going to perform in this offense now that's missing a couple of key offensive linemen. They're two best, basically, and you can tell it's taking a toll on this team. And look, let's face it, these are running backs 3 and 4 on the depth chart for a reason, all right? Now, Hassan Haskins is a little different here. He's more of the type of back that they're missing with Najee and Hampton. He's a bigger back. He's definitely not a blazer, right? This guy runs 6'2", 228, and you know what? He's basically, you can call him a plotter from what we've seen in his career. Averages 3 yards per carry. Now, to be fair, he hasn't gotten a whole lot of carries in his career. He's only got 64, and he's been in the league since 2022. But the other knock on him is the fact that, like, he doesn't rip off big runs. He's a guy who will get those kind of grimy yards between the tackles. But what is the ceiling, right? I mean, the ceiling is that he can score touchdowns potentially in this offense, which should still be a pretty good offense, even with the injuries that they've had. The reason why he's next man up, partly, look, Jim Harbaugh knew him from Michigan. That's where Haskins went to college. And so he's got the connection there. And he's probably first priority here because he actually did make the cut when he's talking about the 53-man rosters here, and Vidal did not. Vidal now being brought up because of those injuries. So you figure Haskins gets the early down work. He gets first crack at the lead job here for whatever it's worth. Now, as far as Vidal, he'll have a role on passing downs. He's a smaller back. He's definitely a faster back. This guy does have a lot of speed, and that's why a lot of people were hyped up about him last year. And it amounted to nothing, basically. He only averaged 3.6 yards per carry on 43 attempts in his rookie season. Now, again, he wasn't given extended run, and I don't know if he'll get it this year, but he's definitely got a chance to prove that last year was a fluke. Vidal is a good pass catcher, and this is a player who has 88th percentile speed score. You know, you got that tantalizing upside, that possibility that he can make big plays, that he can produce at least some sort of a floor as a receiver. But then again, we haven't seen it yet. So look, there's risk on both sides here. If you're looking for potential breakout, you could take a chance on either one. If you're looking for a more short-term, I don't want to even say floor, but at least possibility of production, I think Haskins is your first choice. Vidal is that kind of dart throw and see what if he looks like a lot of people were hoping he would look like last year. Now, one of last week's standouts that definitely has already delivered some production for the first time in his career, though, is Ryan Flournoy of the Cowboys. So he pretty much out of nowhere garnered 9 targets, but caught 6 of them for 114 yards. I mean, this Dallas offense has been absolutely rolling even without CeeDee Lamb. You know, George Pickens is the number 1 guy there. Jake Ferguson is the number 2 target there at tight end. We didn't really know who, if anyone, would do anything at wide receiver. Cavante Turpin sounded interesting. Well, then he got hurt. Jalen Tolbert actually had a decent game last week. And then he did absolutely nothing, not a single catch last week. And so then here we go with Ryan Flournoy. You probably don't even know the name Ryan Flournoy because this was a 6th-round pick out of Southeast Missouri State. And last year, he had a total of 102 yards. Yeah, he's already passed last year's total just with that one game. And so this could be kind of an outlier. I mean, this could be a complete outlier. Let's just face it, right? This game could never happen again for a guy like Flournoy. Or maybe he's earned some trust from Dak Prescott. Maybe they continue to go to him. And look, there's probably a good chance that CeeDee Lamb isn't going in week 6. Maybe he'll be back in week 7. Who knows here? But look, any offense that is rolling like this one is, a receiver like Flournoy, even if he just earns that number 3 role, definitely has some potential. We really just don't have that much data on Flournoy because he was so scarcely used last season and again, not in a major program in college. So, I mean, of course, we're talking speculation here, as we are with a lot of these picks. But again, it's that situation in that offense. Let's see exactly how many targets he gets this week. Now, not as surprising to see name Jack Bech as a guy who's starting to slowly emerge in that Raiders offense, right? Very quiet, not only to start the season, but I mean, really in the preseason and training camp, it was all about Dante Thornton, right? Remember him? Dante Thornton, the next Megatron? Yeah, not so much. Look, even if Thornton winds up being more Jalen Hyatt than Calvin Johnson, it doesn't matter. Bech is a guy we identified early in the preseason. In fact, Chris did a whole video saying maybe, just maybe, this could be the next Puka, at least a guy who similarly profiles in the sense that he's got that build. He's a guy who was drafted a little bit later and could emerge in an offense like the Raiders, which, let's face it, they don't have a true standout number 1 guy there. I mean, we thought it was Jakobi Meyers, and it should be Jakobi Meyers, but what has Jakobi Meyers done lately? Not a whole lot. Keep in mind, before the season started, about a week before the season, in fact, Meyers was asking to get out of there. He wanted a trade. He wanted a new contract. He didn't get either one. I'm guessing he probably still wants either a new contract or a trade. In fact, right now, I might prefer the trade part. The Raiders aren't going anywhere. It actually makes a lot of sense for them to flip him to a team that could use help at receiver. There's no guarantee this will happen, of course. We always talk about trades, and like the NFL trade deadline is nothing like the baseball trade deadline where, we have half of these teams making major moves. In the NFL, it's usually mostly quiet. We have a couple of minor moves, but we have seen some receivers go from team to team. Think of Amari Cooper last year. That didn't pan out, but still, there are teams that are willing to take on a veteran like Meyers, who right now isn't commanding that much of a salary. So naturally, if this happens, and at that point, the Raiders are pretty much out of contention, let's face it, they're probably not going to be in contention no matter what. Bech is going to take on an even bigger role. We've already seen it, got 5 targets last week, and that was his first real involvement in the offense. It's probably going to continue to climb, especially if Brock Bowers just continues to miss. Now, I can't promise you he'll be catching a ton of accurate targets based on the way Geno Smith is looking, but that's a different story. Look, Bech, for what it's worth, is a talented receiver who now is starting to get his opportunity. Another rookie wide receiver whose name you definitely know. Maybe now it's the time to stash him. Quick reminder first, if you have questions and you don't want to ask them on the live stream for whatever reason, you can't make the show, or you want to ask them at any time of the day, just pick up your phone and use the Draft Lane app. It is a free download for the App Store and the Play Store. And if you use code NGAME, then you get 10 free credits. Start asking away. So Luther Burden was a very hyped player in college, in the draft, in the preseason, and so far he's produced exactly 1 good game. That one game was pretty good. In fact, it was his first 100-yard game of the season, 101 to be exact. Most of that production came on that one play, though. It was kind of a flea flicker, tricky play, and he broke loose, and that was it. He made that one big splash play. Somehow, in the other games combined, he's got negative yardage. In fact, 2 of the first 4 games that he's played with Bears, he's got negative yardage. Not a good look. The comp has been made over and over and over again that he's going to be basically Debo in this offense. And that's pretty much what it looks like. He's basically getting all his targets at or near the line of scrimmage, right? These screen passes, little hitch and go type of things, and that's it. But Burden does have the potential to be much, much more in Ben Johnson's offense. this might be the time to stash him because despite the mostly negative production here, and again, that one big game was basically on that one play, but still, he is, for what it's worth, leading the team in yards per route run, and mostly on that one play. But still, it's also worth noting that DJ Moore has done a whole lot of nothing lately, and his involvement, in fact, his snap share, is actually going down quietly but steadily. Like Olamide Zacchaeus, the veteran, he's out there. He's not doing a whole lot either. We know they drafted Burden in the second round for a reason. Heard a lot of the hype, a lot of the talk. They think, and by they I don't mean analysts. I mean Ben Johnson and the coaching staff. They're saying that basically he could replace DJ Moore. He could be the best receiver in this whole offense. And remember, they still have Rome Odunze, so that's saying something. The reason to stash Burden now is because the Bears are coming off that bye, and we see this all the time. They have that post-bye bump. Rookies start to get a little more comfortable with the playbook. Coaches try to find ways to get them more involved. Burden hasn't been that involved yet, but I mean, eventually the plan is he's going to be at least one of their top three guys, if not eventually, maybe the top guy. I'm not going to say he's better than Odunze. Rome Odunze is just a stud, but it looks like DJ Moore is becoming replaceable. Is the king Derrick Henry replaceable? No, absolutely not. Look, I'm going to talk about Keaton Mitchell. This has nothing to do with Derrick Henry's production. Derrick Henry is still a monster. He's a cyborg. He is indestructible. It's the offense. It's the quarterback play. It's not Derrick Henry's fault. But here's the thing. This Baltimore offense needs something, right? And so we saw for the first time after being inactive, a healthy inactive early on in the season, Keaton Mitchell is finally getting on the field. So he only saw 4 snaps in week 5, but on all 4 of those snaps, he touched the ball. So they put him out there to do something, to give them a spark, because we know what Keaton Mitchell can do, and any given play, he could take it to the house. Mitchell was starting to look like a very exciting young running back in his rookie season. Had only 2 touchdowns, but they were 39 and 40 yards. He also had a run of 60 yards. Again, he gives them that explosive element. And, for what it's worth, I did try to warn people, don't pick up Justice Hill after that one big game a couple weeks ago. He's only a passing down back. He's only in there when Baltimore's losing big, which they've been doing lately, but I don't expect that to last the rest of the season. I mean, come on, Lamar Jackson will be back after the bye. So Keaton Mitchell is a guy who will mix in on early downs. He'll mix in, whenever they need that spark, whenever they need to give King Henry a rest. Keaton Mitchell does not need a ton of snaps and touches. Usually that's what we go for, in terms of running backs for fantasy value. This is an exception. A running back who has gotten a little bit of run lately, a little bit more, is Trevor Etienne. Now, this is purely a stash, and I really hope none of you wound up drafting the wrong T. Etienne and somehow got him on your squad on draft day. That wouldn't have felt so good. But look, you can stash Trevor Etienne because right now, as it stands, he's the RB2 for Carolina. So keep in mind, this is because Chuba Hubbard missed last week. There's no guarantee Chuba Hubbard is out long term. It doesn't seem like a serious issue with that calf. I know everyone who picked up Rico Dowdle is kind of hoping that he doesn't come back soon. He'll probably come back soon. And so now you got a guy like Chuba Hubbard who's proven. You have Rico Dowdle who looked amazing last week. Where does that leave Trevor Etienne? Well, honestly, it leaves him as a third running back here. But as we've seen, injury happens all the time to running backs. So if he's the number 2 guy behind Rico Dowdle, he'll continue to get some carries. He's gotten 11 just over the past 2 weeks, and he's looked fairly good for what it's worth. He's averaging 4.9 yards so far. He hasn't been involved as a pass catcher. You figure that would change. I mean, he's somebody who, similarly to his brother, has pretty good receiving chops. Now, some of you did draft rookie Jaydon Blue for Dallas. I get it. I drafted him a couple places too because we didn't really know exactly what this Cowboys backfield looks like. We do know now, Javonte Williams apparently having his career season. He's been great on all counts. You can't deny it, right? If Javonte is healthy, he's the guy. But Miles Sanders is not healthy, which is why we saw the debut of Jaydon Blue in week 5. No, not on the field too much. Again, like some of these other backs I've talked about, 4 carries, right? Very limited usage. But actually, the best thing he did wasn't a touch. It was in pass protection. And this is exactly what keeps rookies off the field if they can't do it. Pick up that blitz, protect the quarterback. And there was one play, the commentators even made a note of it, that he picked up that blitz. He protected on a third down situation. And that is huge. That definitely can earn the coaching staff's trust. And he's already getting some work on special teams. So maybe we start to see him work in the mix a little bit more and become that RB2. And I don't want to put it out there, but you know it's true. If Javonte gets hurt, and this guy has been hurt before, plenty, then all of a sudden Jaydon Blue is a priority pickup on the waiver wire. These are the type of players that you stash because you know the upside. He's in a great offense. You know he's got great speed. And so the potential, if everything breaks right, is massive. Is there massive potential with any receiver in Cleveland these days? Maybe not, but we'll see because Isaiah Bond all of a sudden is growing in this offense. He's become the number 2 guy there with Cedric Tillman on IR. And so rookie Dylan Gabriel, sure, he's not a guy with a cannon arm. I know we keep saying this over and over again because it's true. He's not going to sling it, right? But he's more accurate than Joe Flacco, and he's the guy right now. I mean, he had a decorated college career. The coaching staff has trust in him, and he's getting the ball to Bond. Bond was second on the team in targets this past week. And so if there's a receiver who does benefit, it seems to be Bond. And I'll talk about trade deadline earlier. I mean, who knows with Jerry Jeudy? Maybe this is a team that moves on from him. They just go full youth movement with all these rookies. I mean, why shouldn't they? Worth noting, too, that Nathan Janke of PFF pointed out that Cleveland, for the rest of the season, has the second easiest schedule specifically for wide receivers. So there's some opportunity here. Look, Bond is a big play threat. Bond is a guy I already talked about a couple of weeks ago on the waiver wire video. So you should be familiar with him, right? But keep in mind that he is going to continue to get better as the season goes on. And then no promises here, but I do think it's worth mentioning that Roman Wilson could be finally the number 2 guy for Pittsburgh because Calvin Austin has that shoulder injury. It could keep him out again. And look, they need some consistency there at the receiver position. I don't think they can just keep scraping guy with like Ben Skoranek, can they? Roman Wilson missed last year because of injury, hasn't had a lot of time to do anything. As a Steeler, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers has any trust in him. They're just going to wind up trading for Alan Lazard. Seems inevitable. Well, look, just keep in mind that if Austin is gone, somebody's got to fill the void here. Wilson is a talented receiver that they took pretty early, too, in last year's draft. And so you figure they've got to give him a shot. So this is a name. I'm not going to say I'm stashing him. Like, I'm not actively picking up Roman Wilson, but I want to keep an eye out to see if he's at least involved this week. A lot of options there with a lot of upside. Go ahead and start stashing. This is the time to make those moves and get ahead of the waiver wire before you're having to scramble and fight with those fab dollars. Don't forget, everything you need to win for this week is going to be right here in the playlist.